Hey everyone, this week we're going to have 3 little mini lectures instead of having just one normal 20-minute lecture, okay? So these are going to be 3 quick videos you guys can watch that kind of go along with what we're talking about in the textbook. And the 3 things we're going to talk about really in our lecture this week are going to be CSS Box Model, Drop Shadows, and Rounded Corners, okay? So make sure you watch all 3 of these videos. So let's get started. This first video, we're going to be talking about the CSS Box Model, what it is, how to set it up, why we use it, stuff like that. So let's ask that first question, what is the CSS Box Model? Well, simply stated, it is a series of boxes that contains all of your content. And when I say content, I'll use that word a little bit in this video, but when I say the word content, that can be text, it can be videos, pictures, it could be an audio player, it could be a form, it could be anything, any type of content that we are creating, we're adding to our site. It's going to go inside these series of boxes. So let's look at the first one. The first box that that's going to house everything is called the content box, and that's where our content truly lives. Okay, here is a picture we use of a tree. Okay. Every piece of content, whether it's text or an image, is going to be defined by height and width. This is very important that we have this set, because without it, it's going to screw everything up. Okay, so just remember the important thing to take away from this section right here of the little picture we got here, okay, is content needs to always have a height and a width. So once we have our content, we're going to need to put padding around it, okay? And padding is going to be an imaginary box. It's not something you're going to be able to directly see, but you'll be able to directly see the impact of it. And all it is it's spacing that we're putting around our content. Okay, so if we had an image, say here we had a 267 by 24 image, okay, we're going to add 6 pixels of padding around it. And all that's going to do is that's going to give us 6 pixels of white space around an image. So if there was text that went around this image or more pictures in line with it or anything like that, it's going to give it 6 pixels of white space between the next item. Okay, so this is going to be really important. And padding is generally going to be on all 4 sides. You are capable of adding it just to the left or right, or just to the top and bottom, or just to the left, just to the right, something like that. But generally we're going to want to add padding all the way around just to give it a nice uniform look. Outside of the padding, we're going to want to add a border. And a border isn't necessary, okay? But it is a good thing to have. It adds some, basically, it kind of boxes everything in for you so you can actually see these boxes instead of them just being understood that they're there, okay? And there's a couple of stylings we can use with the borders, okay? We can have a solid border, we can have a dashed border, and we can have a dotted border. Okay, these again not necessary, but they're really good things to put in here. It just makes everything look nice. Okay. Then the next item that we really need to look at is going to be the margin. Okay, but before we figure the margin, we have to figure out how big is our actual content, our padding, and our border. How big is all that? And the way we figure that is we're going to take the width plus the padding, plus the border, and this is going to be the actual width of our content area. Okay, so we have to take that into account when we're starting to build our site. It's a really good idea before you even sit down and start adding your pictures, adding your text, all that stuff. Sit down on a piece of paper and draw out the content blocks, how you want them to look on the site. Okay, spend that time. Draw it out, just do little doodles. It can be on a napkin, piece of paper. You can do it in a program like Visio or anything like that. It doesn't matter. Just sit down and draw out how you want things. Then you can figure out, okay, how many pixels do I want to put between things? How big is my padding going to need to be? And then how big are my margins? If we do that, it's going to save us a lot of headache in the future. Okay, so it's a good little step we can take. Now, actually getting down to the margins. Okay, what they are margins are just used to separate elements from neighbors. Okay, this does not actually affect the size of the box that we just created, but it's going to affect everything around it. So if your margin is too large and you have a content block right next to it, it could push it off of the page, it could cut it off, it could push it down to the next line below it. They can do a lot of kind of crazy things the way our page looks. So just make sure before you start going in here and setting all your margins, think about how big everything needs to be, do the math, and then go in and set your margins once you're creating everything. So that way everything has that good structured uniform look. A term that you guys may hear is going to be margin collapsing. And what this is when one margin slides past another until it actually hits the content inside that margin. Okay. This can be a good thing. Okay. It can allow us to kind of manipulate our content. We can kind of jam things in there if we really need to. But it can also be a bad thing and make your site look wrong or ugly or whatever. Okay. So just keep in mind, again, margins are not going to push one another. What they're going to do is push the content blocks. Okay. Once we have created our site, we've laid it out in this box model, you need to be aware that every browser is not going to show your content exactly the same. Each browser is going to have its own default style sheet, how it's going to work. Okay, so you just need to be aware of that. You may have to do some tweaking to make everything look the same from Chrome to Internet Explorer to Firefox to Opera, whatever the browser may be. Okay, I tend to lean towards Chrome because it seems to be more of what HTML should be. Okay, usually things, once you code them out, they're going to look like they should in Chrome. Firefox is pretty good too, but I personally I like to use crazy stuff going on my computer. Uh-oh. Anyway, there we go. Sorry about that. I like to use Chrome. That's usually how I'm going to develop my pages in, and usually I have luck and it's going to look the same across everything. Usually the guy that's going to give us some problems is Internet Explorer. So just be aware of that also, that when you're creating something, it may not look right in Internet Explorer and you may have to go in and tweak some settings. Now some terms that we may bring up, I know I've used block already, but some things that may come up are these three words: block, inline, and inline block. So these are important to know what they mean. We're not necessarily going to use them a whole lot this week, but in the coming weeks you'll hear them come up. I may ask you to put something inline or create an inline block, something like that. So I want you guys to know what these 30 things mean. The first is block. It is a block level element starting on its own line and takes up as much horizontal space as possible. Okay, so it's not limited to how wide anything is. It's just going to keep going, okay, as far as it can go. That's what a block level element is. Next, an inline level element sits next to each other like words in a sentence and do not have a new line after them. Okay, so you can think of this as maybe 2, 3, 4 images sitting right next to each other. These are inline level elements. Okay, and then we have finally inline block. It's like an inline element, except that things like width and height can be changed. Okay, so just going forward, pay attention to these terms. Okay, if you see them, you know what they mean. So make sure you guys read the chapter, watch this video however many times you need, and then I also provided you with some good websites that have some more in-depth explanation of the box model and even some demos where you can play around with it on the W3 Schools site. So make sure you do that and watch the next video. Thanks.